I'm Candice Gliatto. I'm a lead Qnity coach and educator, and I specialize in finance. And it's crazy to hear that come out of my mouth because you rewind to 10, 15 years ago, this was the function that created the most anxiety and overwhelm for me. People say now, oh, do you have like an accounting background, anything like that? No, it's just through experience and through the lens of a business owner, of a hairdresser, really taking a very simple and structured approach to financial management to be able to have a high profit business. And I'm going to share with you some of those things today. But just to start out, I want to hear from you guys. I'm curious about your thoughts and feelings when it comes to the finance function or to financial management. If you guys want to put in the chat, what's the first word that comes to mind when you think about driving profitability and driving finance and really managing that whole situation? And I've got to pull up my chat so I can see it. So I can see I can't see it. So Erin, maybe you can read to me some of the things that are on the chat, but go ahead and put the first word that comes to mind when you think about running the finance function of your business. Oh, I see some coming in, but I can't see.
We see excitement. It used to be stress. Tomorrow with the laughing.
Tomorrow.
Anxiety.
Yep. That is, what'd you say, Erin?
Freedom and options, but that was Heath. So that's cheating.
I love that. That's the positive approach to it.
Yeah.
I love it. So, the idea is that we get there where Heath is explaining, but the reality is that, 73% of Americans, we rank finance as our number one stressor. And I've been there, and maybe you can relate yourselves. 66% of small business owners face financial challenges, mostly around really paying and staying on top of their operating expenses. And so, with the approach that we take at Qnity to financial management, we try and make it as digestible, as simple, and as visual as possible so that we can go from having those feelings of avoidance and intimidation, fear, loss of control, to feeling confident and strategic and empowered and in control, and ultimately having a profitable company. And so it was these practices that really helped me in my own business go from not being profitable at all to being 17%, to having a 17% profit. And it was just about, really the overlying thing here is not being afraid to look at it. I was just on a call this morning with our profit group, our SBO, Money SBO group. And it was really what it came down to. Everybody that had success throughout our time together in the group or throughout our workshops, it was just about taking the time to really look at the numbers and to not feel too overwhelmed to, take any action there because it was an intimidating function. And so what I really want to share with you today is two things, okay? Because it's hard to choose. There's so much great information in the SBO body of work. It's where do I start when Erin asked me to present today? So I want to start by looking at our money mindset and really identifying like what those feelings are and how we can work through them by focusing on why it's important. And then I also want to share with you some best practices around bringing other team members into the conversation around the finance function. You don't have to do it alone. Okay, so starting with money mindset. The best way to get ourselves in a mindset of, caring and really not doing that avoidance thing is to think about why it's important. Okay. And so, and again, Erin, I'll have you read me what it says in the chat, but I want us to take a minute this morning to think about what our why is. Why is money important? Why is profitability important to us as business owners and leaders? And so I'll go through some common money whys, and you go ahead and put yours in the chat. One might be freedom from worry. I know when I first started out and I was having some challenges managing the money, I felt a lot of stress and anxiety, and I just didn't want to feel that anymore. Maybe you want to grow your business or reinvest in it. Or maybe you're looking to increase the value of your business. Are you planning an exit? We know we want our business to have a high value if we are going to be doing that. And maybe we need to be able to maintain our competitive edge. And We need to make sure that we can, recruit and retain great team members and really prepare them to be able to serve our clients in the best way possible. Now, being prepared for an emergency. We all experienced the 2020 emergency, and some of us went into that in a lot better positions than others. So how can we make sure that if anything like that, God forbid, ever happens again, or anything else, that we're prepared to really weather that storm? Not all of us do it just for the money. We do it so that we can show up for our community and serve our community in a way that is impactful. And at the end of the day, that might be where our heart is, but if we don't have the money to be able to do that, then we're not going to be able to do that in the way that we envision. So perhaps that's your money why. Maybe you want to create ongoing opportunities for your team members. I know I hear a lot of people, talking about continuing to create growth paths for their managers and for their leaders, and for their technical team members. It takes money to do that. And then, of course, this one gets forgotten about way too often, is to compensate yourself appropriately. It's a lot of work to run a business, and you deserve to be paid, and you deserve to be paid well for that. So maybe that's your money why, and that's not a selfish money why. That's a really, really important money why. So go ahead and drop in the chat what your money why is. And if this is the first time you've thought about this, take your time, but why should we start looking at this a little bit closer? What is the reason that's driving you? So go ahead and put that in the chat. And Erin, as they come up, you can read them to me because I can't see. So I'm going to go on to, because we have limited time here, I'm going to go on to the next thing that I want to share with you. Now, this is something that I'm going to go much, much deeper into at the Phil. But I really want to talk about how we can get other team members involved. So oftentimes I hear that the owner of the business is the only person involved in the finance function. And that's great. You can do, I love this quote, you can do anything, but not everything. The finance function is big, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of thought to manage. And it also takes a lot of accountability. And so one of the things that I learned on my, profit journey is that the value of getting one of my other team, or more than one, but getting my other team members involved. And so I want to share with you a little bit about what this looked like. So it started out with just me, and I was really just getting some systems and best practices under my belt. But when we really were able to take our profitability to the next level was when I brought my GM, Ashley, into the finance function picture. And what this did for her, this, you might think oh, they don't want to do that. No, this actually created a ton of opportunity for her to grow and learn and to have some freedom when it came to, how she ran her part of her responsibility at the salon, and really gave her the power to be able to make an impact. And so I'll share with you just a couple of things that we do together that you might be able to put into action right away. And again, at the Phil, we're going to go much deeper into this. So the first thing that we do is we have weekly meetings, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a second. We also have really specific spending thresholds that are set that Ashley can use. So we set them together, but she's the one that uses them. And then we have a best practice called name to every number that I'll explain to you what that is in just a moment. So let's start with these weekly meetings. Going back to what I shared earlier, focusing on the finance function and being aware of what's happening is 90% of the battle. When we go like this, because it's intimidating, we're not going to get the results that we want. And so what I really challenge everybody to do is to start a ritual of having a weekly touch base around finance. And I like to look at this touch base and structure this touch base through the lens of the Qnity 3 C's: closure, clarity, and confidence. So starting off by getting closure to the previous week as it relates to the money in, the money out, and your money management. Then moving into clarity. What do we need to see happen next week as it relates to your money in? So your weekly sales goal, your upcoming expenses, what's controllable, what needs to be monitored a little bit closer. And then, of course, our favorite best practice, Qnity, which is doing a weekly transfer to savings. And then from there, once we know where we're going, we can identify what needs to happen to get us there. And that might look different depending on what your company's needs are. Maybe we need to focus on a controllable. Maybe we need to encourage the team to continue driving their sales goals. But really what it all comes down to is making sure that every single week we're creating some space to talk about it so that we don't lose focus. Now, if I was doing that by myself, you might see how I could maybe skip past that. And so when we have an accountability partner that really forces us to take a look at these things, then we're much more likely to actually execute, just like Heath was talking about earlier. We're much more likely to actually execute these meetings and execute the action steps that need to happen for these things to get done. Now, the next, and I should say, we're big fans of habit streaks here. So I always brag about my streak of having weekly touch bases. So proud to say that Ashley and I are on week 424 of having our weekly finance meeting. And I truly believe that this is where our successes come from, because it's always front of mind for us. Now, the other thing that Ashley and I do is we use spending thresholds. And so I'll set that spending threshold based on what our budget says we can do or not do. And then Ashley executes the spending with her pre-approved spending thresholds. Now, this is such an important thing I cannot stress enough how powerful it is to actually delegate these things. Okay. And here's a little story that's kind of funny about why it's so important to do that. So Ashley, who does the spending with the spending threshold, she goes on vacation. Okay. This is a real story. This happened. She went on vacation, and all of a sudden I was the person that was to be doing the ordering and the scheduling. And because ultimately it's my decision where the money gets spent, I kind of stretched it a little bit. Okay. I'm like, we need that. We'll get a little bit more. And so again, when you delegate this to somebody else and it's not, their money, they're going to be more committed to staying within the budget that you've set for them. And that's the case with Ashley too. And so that is one of the most important things. In fact, she hates when I do the bill paying when she goes on vacation, because she says, I always go too far. So that discipline factor is huge. Now, the last thing I'll share with you about bringing other people into it is one of our favorite best practices, which is called name to every number. So with name to every number, we're really empowering our team members and divvying up the responsibility of our P&L to other people. And what we do is we assign their name to a line item on our P&L. There's a lot of lines there and a lot of expenses to manage. If we can focus on less of those, we have a higher likelihood of being successful in managing that expense or that income line better. And so I'll show you an example of what that might look like, but what it results in is ownership, accountability, and really learning. Ashley really was able to learn how to drive profitability through this practice. And of course, we're all supporting each other as leaders, but this makes a huge difference in how we drive results. So it is just this simple. So here's an example of a P&L. And what we've got here is a column that identifies whose responsibility it is to make sure that we stay within budget on our revenue and our expense line items. This makes it so that we can kind of relax and not have to manage every little thing. But then when we come together as a team, we get closure on how the month or the year or the quarter went. There's somebody that is responsible for making sure that the numbers are where they need to be. So that's my very quick overview of ways that you can bring other team members into the fold of the finance function. But I really plan to go much deeper in this, because I think there's a huge opportunity in our industry to really start sharing this responsibility, and so much benefit to doing it. So I cannot wait for the Phil and to see you all there.
Amazing. Candice, you've done this workshop and variations of it now, several times, and you do it in your work with your groups. What do you think was your biggest takeaway for when you did that workshop and the new profit planner that we launched at the Phil last year?
I think the biggest takeaway from the workshop was that, I think the most powerful part about Money SBO, the workshop, is that you leave with an action plan. So, yes, we go through many systems and structures for, creating profitability, but then you leave a class where there's that much information given to you, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed, or where do I even start? And I think really tying back to what we at Qnity do best, which is, we create tools that support people from going to knowing to doing, it really goes back to execution. We have execution tools that support the execution of these financial management systems. And it just becomes very clear what we need to do. And when we're clear, we're confident. So,
and
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you done?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this because I got a text from someone, and I am not going to say the name because I think I want to be respectful, but it was someone that went to the Phil, and I talked to this individual, and he had never met Qnity before, but he decided to come to the Phil. So he was new, sat through the profit workshop, and talked to him a couple months later. And he said he implemented one of the systems, which was creating a profit reserve account, which this is a pretty common system, right? In many practices of financial management, whether it be personal or business, but it's just having a separate bank account and transferring a certain portion of sales into that separate bank account. And it's reserved as a profit account, right? And so he started that. Within a couple months, he had over $6,000 in it. And we just got an email to say it's been almost a year now, right? Or not almost a year. It's still 4 or 5 months away. He's already at $45,000 in a separate account that could have just been lost had he not implemented that very simple system. And so it's things like this with the tools and the support and the structure that really make us tick at Qnity, because we want you to go to this workshop and actually leave with a plan that leads to results to solve those gaps. So it's so exciting to see some of the results that we've heard.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And I think it's just that. It's just about having, a clear plan in place and just executing it and doing it and going from knowing to doing, and seeing people have results like that is just so powerful. And that's what happens when you take a more simplified and a very visual approach to the work that we do.